Now, interestingly, as I got into MBC earlier today, this afternoon, just around 5 o'clock, I was met by a police officer. And you know, when you meet police officers, I consider myself an upstanding citizen, so I did not have much fear. But he introduced himself, and he said he had a letter for me. And I want to share this letter with you, parts of it, because I don't want to go into a lot of details. It is 6 pages long, and it was from Peter Foster, the Speaker of the House, but he is acting as a representative of Claudius Francis. And it says it is in reference to defamatory statements made of and concerning the Honorable Claudius J. Francis. And I want to read you parts of that letter, which have been addressed to me, so it becomes mine, so I can share it with whomever I please. It says, we act on behalf of our client, the Honorable Claudius J. Francis, the current President of the Senate and well-respected and renowned insurance broker and highly respected radio and television personality and host of the program Straight Up. Our client is well-respected for his opinions on all matters of public interest. He is well known for telling it like it is, as his views have always been thoroughly researched and sound. He was also the press secretary for the Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Kenny D. Anthony, during the period 26 May 1997 to 31st July 1998. These important and trusted positions he holds and has held is due to the strength of his character and his good reputation. We are instructed by our client that during a television newscast on NBC television station on the evening of the 30th of March 2016, you published of and concerning our client very serious, false, malicious, and defamatory allegations. In that news report published to thousands of viewers in St. Lucia and over the World Wide Web, you made the following inter alia false and defamatory allegations of and concerning our client. The statements you made during your news report were as follows, and I will just stick to the part that I would have read directly in the newscast. In other news, the main opposition United Workers' Party has challenged Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony to do some house cleaning if his government is serious about addressing the growing incidence of rape on the island. This comes in light of the UWP's assertion that 2 high-ranking government officials have been charged with rape in the past. Sherry Ann Gillard Williams tells us more. And we have Sherry Ann Gillard Williams' report. It is quoted verbatim there. And Nancy Charles is the subject of the interview in that report. Nancy Charles, of course, is the treasurer of the United Workers' Party. Yes. And my last line after the report was completed, I said, that's a strong statement by the UWP. I wonder what will happen coming out of that in coming weeks. Yes. So that is what I'm quoted as saying. However, the lawyer's letter continues, our client was clearly identified by you during this television newscast as the person who heard them would have understood them to refer to our client and to the Honorable Lon Theophilus, the Minister for Tourism. Your reference to, and it quotes Nancy Charles again, clearly identifies our client as one of the persons being referred to. And let me just read that quote. The quote says, we are aware that there are persons within the administration of this current administration, I must say, who have either been accused or charged with rape. Whether the charges were dropped subsequently is of no effect, but the point is that there were charges laid against them. So we are asking the Prime Minister to ensure at the end of the day that he makes sure that his cabinet is clear, and then he can now come to the people of St. Lucia. And it says, and your opening reference to this news story that the main opposition United Workers' Party has challenged Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony to do some house cleaning if his government is serious about addressing the growing incidence of rape on the island. This comes in light of the UWP's assertion. It restates that. It says that clearly identifies our client as one of the persons being referred to. These statements, whether in their natural and ordinary meaning or by innuendo, meant and were understood to mean by all of those here in St. Lucia and elsewhere, regionally and internationally, who heard these statements made by you and published during your newscast that the Honorable Claudius J. Francis, the President of the Senate, is guilty of rape and ought to be removed from his position as President of the Senate and is not fit to hold any high office within the government administration. You made these highly damaging, serious, and unfounded statements during your news report, despite the fact that our client was never convicted of rape. So, I mean, I don't even want to dissect it much, but just that line, despite the fact that our client was never convicted of rape. Now, that could have many meanings, but I'll leave that up to your imagination. I don't want to make any other statements lest I get another letter tomorrow. Further, you did not, as a responsible journalist would have done, invite a comment from our client to afford him the opportunity to refute these false and malicious accusations. These allegations made and repeated by you and which are totally false accuse our client of one of the most serious of offenses punishable by imprisonment for life. Your flippant, callous, and reckless republication of Nancy Charles' statement that whether the charges were dropped subsequently is of no effect compounds and aggravates the malicious statements you are carelessly and negligently, or you so carelessly and negligently made of our client. We are instructed by our client that following these false and defamatory allegations made by you of and concerning him and widely circulated over the World Wide Web to persons in St. Lucia and elsewhere, many defamatory and derogatory comments have been made of him over the internet, and that he is now held up to ridicule, odium, and contempt. These statements made and repeated by you were designed to inflict serious, lasting, and hurtful damage to our client's feelings and good reputation. Our client has no doubt whatsoever that you well knew that your publication of the statements referred above are nakedly and deliberately false. Despite your knowledge that they were and are false, you nevertheless recklessly made and published them to inflict grave and irreparable harm to his good name, character, and reputation. As stated above, you did not investigate these allegations or invite a comment from our client. As such, you were totally reckless in your reporting of the earlier news item aired on Radio Caribbean International. In fact, you embellished the news report by adding statements which were not made by Nancy Charles. In these circumstances, we have advised our client that your news report on NBC television station and over the internet, and which remains there, constitute a very serious and grave libel. We have therefore been asked to demand that you immediately retract your defamatory statements of and concerning our client and undertake to discontinue these publications and allegations within 24 hours of the receipt of this letter. We also demand that you issue a public apology to our client in terms to be approved by us. Additionally, you are required to pay our client compensation and costs incurred to date. In this regard, we look forward to hearing from you on the amounts you are prepared to pay. Should you fail to act as demanded by our client and ourselves within 24 hours of your receipt of this letter, our client will institute proceedings against you without further notice for defamation on the basis of aggravated damages and costs. In any event, our client reserves all the rights. Yours faithfully, Peter I. Foster and Associates, well, somebody has signed on his behalf, legal representatives for Honorable Claudius J. Francis, and an apology was attached to it. So the apology that they want me to read. I will not read the apology, lest you get the impression that I am apologizing. So I'll not even venture to read the apology which was sent in with that correspondence. Suffice it to say that I am not intimidated by anybody in this country. I'm not intimidated by any politician. I'm not intimidated by any lawyer. I'm not intimidated by any business person in this country. I have a reputation for professionalism, and I stand by my reputation and my work over the last 20 years in media. Now, this letter, 6 pages long, I don't think it's even worth the paper. I don't think that the learned gentleman should have wasted his stationery printing this letter, because I am not intimidated. Whereas you can intimidate other people, Clinton Reynolds is not intimidated by you. Okay? Never have been, never will be. As far as I'm concerned, this is total garbage. You will get no apology from me, and if you want to, we'll see in court, my brother.